Okay, so why learning Python in 2021? Okay, so well, Python is getting a lot of attention these years. It's thankful for you. Have even heard about the AI and machine learning? These are the buzzword of in the IT field, and it touches everyone's life, right? So whenever you using Alexa or Siri's, or go to if you buy a Tesla, there's autonomous driving everywhere. So Python is involved in many aspects. So there's a good chance that you will need to use Python if you are in those fields. Okay, and for this course, you don't need to know any programming language before, but you just need to have a have attitude to learn, right? So basically, for any programming language, you need attention to details and other and patience. Basically, you need to practice a lot. Okay, and feel free, and I encourage you guys to help each other by posting questions in the general discussion forum, and also you can email me if you have any questions. I prefer you post a question in the forum so it can benefit everybody, right? Because chances that there's a lot of questions similar. But when you submit your work, I hope that you're doing on your own, right? You can Google search many resources online. In fact, there's a lot of resources online, YouTube, you name it. But I hope that you should really understand it before you do your own work, right? It's fine. You can look at other reference solutions, but at the end of the day, you want to really work on your own so you can understand it, right? So, okay, so I have some references for learning Python. There's tons of them online, and so one of the free books here online is called Think Python: How to Think Like a Computer Scientist. This is an online version, second edition. I think that's an awesome reference book. If you want to have a physical book, right, you can buy it on Amazon as well. The Python tutorial is basically a documentation on the language. So it gives you the basics. I think if you want to learn more about like input, output, formatting and stuff, for example, you can refer to that, right? So it's also a good reference. And this course I ask you to work on Zybooks, which has a built-in code interpreter so that you can run your test or code right on the Zybooks website. However, it's also a good practice to install some kind of Python interpreter on your own computer with something called IDE, Integrated Development Environment, so that you can write code and debug code on your own computer. I highly recommend that because sometimes, for two reasons. One is there may be some bugs in Zybooks that sometimes the network is slow and you may not get what you want in time. Second is it's much easier to debug locally and then copy it to on Zybooks for submission. So for those reasons, you're highly encouraged to install in day one the interpreter and IDE. As a matter of fact, I think the second week you're already asked to write some code in Python IDE. Although you can use other IDE as well, like VS Code. That's what I'm using, and you can use that as well. Okay, and there's also another website called pythontutor.com. This website is awesome. As you can see, if you put some code there, it can visualize the memory space and data structure, like give you a picture of what those Python construct looks like in a visual way. So if you're a visual learner, I highly recommend this tool. You can also share your code by generating a URL and share with others. So if you have asked me a question and you have some sample code, don't attach your original code in the email, but just instead sharing the link to pythontutor.com or there's another website called Replit.com. Replit.com is another online IDE that you can write Python code right away without install Python on your computer, right? So initially you can use that. And also you can share code this way. So we'll talk about that later, but using those can help you a lot. Okay, so let's get a tour about the website. So you probably know the Brightspace already, and for each module, and pay attention, our section number is X1790. So when you let me go to announcement. So the first thing you do is to go to learning modules, right, for each week, and go through module 1, and each module there is tasks for each section, like discussion this week, right? And usually almost every week you need to complete the Zybox activities and labs, and it just goes through them, right? So what's different this semester is that we have a lot of video helpers to give you a idea how to use Zybox. So hopefully by looking at these videos, you get some idea how to work through these. Say for example, here you can see there's lab 1.9 and 1.10 related material. So just look at this. YouTube will help you a lot. Okay, I will post some other professors' video YouTube videos that contain similar material related to Zybox activities, so that you can take a look, right? Any questions on Zybox? And of course, you need to purchase, right? I hope you already have the code, and make sure again your section number, because you can see when I put in all the materials every week, I'm putting in my sections. So if you're not in my section, I cannot grade your score. So you will not get a 0. Okay. So just be mindful. And there is a way to change that, but I hope that you will do it correct the first time. All right. So you need to do all the activities, challenge, and participation activities, labs for each chapter, 1 chapter a week, right? So this week is basic programming, variables, and expressions. You need to go through all these. I think this is super helpful. And for the labs, you need to put in your own code. And in the develop mode, you can run as many times as possible. And it will give you some hint on what's missing. Usually it's like empty space, or if you see things like that, right? When reading a line, that means you there's a lot of things you need to worry about. So that's why I recommend to actually run this in a IDE, either online or on your local computer to troubleshoot, rather than troubleshoot here. Okay, this is really just that provides you some test cases so you can see, and yeah. So, and when it comes to enter the input, you can put it there, right? So I think it's 1 line for each input, right? Like hi and apple, something like that. I think you need 4 input, right? Like 2 and blah, I don't know. So you run a program, you get your input. So basically, that's how you do the input, right? This is a little bit different or unique in Zybox. So 1 line for each input. Okay. Any questions so far? So that's a brief overview of the Brightspace Online. Like I said, you need to install Python. You go to this website, python.org, and you can download the Python. If you're using Mac or Linux, Python is already installed. May not be the correct version, but there's some Python already installed. If you're in the Windows, you need to download and install. And for IDE, there's 2 links. One is for the PyCharm, one is for the VS Code. You can pick either. Okay. All right. So if you just started to learn Python, you may ask, the first question is, how do I run my code, or where should I, run my, start my code? Okay, there are 3 different ways to start Python. All right. And first and foremost, let me open a local IDE. Okay. So this is VS Code. All right. Basically IDE to run code. Now, in VS Code, I want to pay attention to this terminal. Right. Let me just clear it for now. So in the terminal, well, in Windows, you can press the command and type CMD, and it will give you a terminal. So in the terminal, you can test if your Python is installed by just type PYTHON. In my case, I have a version 2 and version 3, so I need to specify which version I use. Okay, Python 3, you can see there is a version string here, 3.9, right? Remember, we're using Python 3 here in this course. Python 2 is too old, right? It's obsoleted, basically. So you can see there is a 3 angle brackets, right? That indicates it's a prompt. So you are in the Python shell, basically. Now you can basically interact with the computer using Python, right? So you can use it as a calculator, for example. If you want to say what is like 4 plus 2, you just say 4 plus 2 and enter, it give you answer 6. So you can just start in right away as a calculator, right? 4 times 2 is 8. What is 4 divided by 2? It's 2.0. Now you notice that this 2.0 has a decimal point in it, right? So this is what we call the floating number. All right. If you want an integer, you're just using for 2/2. That gives you an integer version. It will basically drop the decimal point, right? Say 5/2 is 2.5, but 5 divided by 2 is 2. You will have a lab related to the integer division later. Okay, so that's a pretty important to notice. That's actually Python specific. There is also so we have talked about plus and minus, the same thing, right? How about modular, right? So if you know when you do division, you have a quotient and reminder. To get a reminder, you use a modular sign like percentage, right? Say 5 modular 2, you get 1. Why? Well, 5 divided by 2 is 2, right? So basically 5 divided by 2 has a quotient that's equal to 2 and reminder 1. In other words, 5 is equal to 2 times 2 plus 1, right? So the percent sign is called reminder. It just gives you a, or sometimes it's called a modulo operator, right? So it gives you the reminder when you divide a number with another number, all right? So this is very, very, very important. And you can see a lot of application using that trick to give you some data, some result. But nonetheless, this is one way of interact with Python, just using a Python interpreter. Now, if you are done with your Python, you can use the quit with parentheses. It's a function, right? So now you are out of Python shell. This is one way, but it's kind of tedious because if you have multiple lines of code, you have to do the one by one, and they will run it one by one, right? So it's good for a short, test, and of your Python environment. But if you have a longer version of code, it's normally what you do is, first of all, run basically edit a file, right? Say, for example, test.py. Now, all the Python code ends with .py. So that's a Python source code, right? So now you can use any editor to run Python. So let me just say print Python is awesome. Okay, that's your first line of code. And then you save it. Now you can do Python 3 and test.py, and it will run this code, right? So basically, Python 3 is the name of the interpreter, which reads the file and parse line by line, and run this, from top to bottom. And if your print, it basically output information to the console, and that's the console. So you will get this. Okay. Now, of course, in IDE, you can simply just start a new file like test2 or scratch.py. Yeah, scratch2.py. And then you start encoding, right? Just say print hello world. Okay, that's your first line of code. And in IDE, you can just click on the run button. And here you go, it will show the result in the console. All right, so there are 3 different ways to run Python. Oh, of course, if you go to online IDE, there's 4 different ways, right? Just say print Python is awesome. Okay, and then you just run it. It will show it here. It's the same thing, it's just they moved it online, so you don't need a local computer to run it. All right, so what is Python? Obviously, it's not a snake. It's a modern language, and it comes from a BBC comedy from 1970s called the Monty Python's Flying Circus. So that's where the name comes from. All right, let's see. Okay, we're good on time. So we talk about how to use Python as a calculator. And then the basic stuff about Python is you want to learn different type of numbers and strings and control flows. So that's a basic programming construct. So I think in chapter 1, you're gonna touch base on Python numbers and basic input and output, okay? So Python can do a lot of different things. Let's get started with the example, right? Write a program that asks the user to type in 10 integers as input and then print their sum. Okay, so that's the first challenge in Python. How we deal with that. Okay, let's use the online IDE first. Okay, so first of all, the construct of a Python code, there's a lot of different format, but one thing you can do is to put some comments first, right? So this triple quotes, right, single quotes, and is basically some kind of like documentation, right? So these are called comments or doc strings. So basically anything in between those, the interpreter won't do anything with it. It's basically like, it's only for human to read, right? It's like your notes. And Python won't care. It will happily ignore all these words, right? So that's called doc string. So it's a good habit to have a comment in your code. All right, so when I grade your homework, I also looking for a good programming style, and usually, you need some comments. You can also use a one-line comment like this is another comment. Okay, so to comment what immediate code you are trying to do, right? So these are two different ways to do comments. So we are presented with a problem now. How do we solve it, right? First of all, if I never programmed in Python before, where we start, right? So first of all, I need to know, okay, I need to how to know the the construct to get user input. So in Python, the language is, well, actually you can go to, you can just go search it, right? But it's input. So input is a function, right? If you just do input and you run it and I type in a number and that's done, right? So the computer accepts your input, but there's nothing that you can show, right? So that's the input. But the output is the print, right? The print statement. You can print a string, which you can use single quotes, double quotes, not triple quotes though, right? Single quotes, and you can print something, right? But there's also something called a variable, okay? Use a variable to store the user input, okay? So a variable is just like a name for a number or a string, depends on the type. So the variable has a type, right? So let's say number, okay, is input. So now I can accept the user input from the console, right, and store in a number. I'm gonna print number, okay? I'm gonna just print this number out. Let's run it. So I plug in, give me a number, 42. All right, so the output is 42. So now you can see this is input and this is output, right? Sounds easy, right? Python is really easy. Yeah, input output. That's actually the 50% of the material for week 1, right? So okay, so now we are going to really great details, right? Input can get, you can use a parameters, we call it, you can prompt, you can give user prompt, like what you want, like please enter a number, okay? So once you've done that, notice I have a space after that. White space is important, right? So if I run this, you can see I will give user a prompt. So user knows, okay, I'm gonna have to input something, right? 42. And now for the output, I can make it nicer by saying, you entered and then plus number, okay? So plus basically is overloaded operator. Basically means you are concatenate two string together. So if I run this, you will get, I get 42 and then you entered 42, right? So basically you are stitching together the strings with a variable. Okay, now you may wonder what type of this is, right? I'm gonna print this. Type of number is, okay? Now you can use comma as well. It will automatically give you a space, right? Yes, and there is a function called a type of number. So if you want to know what type of number is, you can use this, right? So let me run it again, 42. So you can see the type of number is in class string. str means this is a string, right? So remember, all the input function give you is just a string. So is string useful? Yeah, it's useful, right? So now what you want to do is, I'm gonna do another variable called sum is equal to number. We'll calculate this, all right? Sum equal to 0. So I'm gonna assign sum equal to 0. Actually, okay, let me just do this first. What is that? Number plus number, okay? So let me just print again, print the sum of the numbers are, comma, sum, okay? So what do you think? This will print, let's run it. So give them a 42, right? Okay, you can see the type of number is a string. You entered 42, everything's good. The sum of the number are 42, 42. what's going on here? Can you think about the reason why this is the answer? Is this what you expected? You can type in the chat or just speak. What's going on here?
Your input is a string, so it's concatenating the two strings together.
Very good. So how can I just make sure that I'm actually doing the integer calculation? Well, I want this to be an integer, right? So actually, it turns out Python has a function called, you guessed it, int, to convert that thing into an integer. Okay, you can directly use this syntax to convert whatever string to int. Now, let's run it again. 42. There is a type of is int, right? Sum is number, type is number. Okay, you entered plus number. Okay, so there is an error. So let's look at the error and see what's going on. It says in line 9, okay, this is important. In line 9, you entered plus number. Can only concatenate string, not int to string. So what happened here is number is right now a integer, right? Because you can see this is class integer. So you cannot concatenate a string with an integer, right? So that's the limitation for Python. In Java, it will automatically convert to a string, so you can do this. But in Python, you can't. I have to convert it to a string. So there is a function called str string to convert it to a string. So now I think that should be fine, right? I need to do 42 again. And you can see type of number is integer because we use int. And the sum is 42 plus 42 is 84. All right. Any questions so far? Remember input and output, and variable is also a very important concept, right? So let's actually complete this challenge. We need to give 10 numbers. Let's make it short, like 3 numbers, right? Or maybe even 2 numbers. So for 2 numbers, we can say number 1 is that, okay? I'm gonna copy and paste. Number 2 is that. Slight variation, okay? And sum is number 1 plus number 2, okay? And we don't need to know the type of number, right? It's for demonstration. And you entered, I don't need to know that either. I just need to print the sum of the numbers are sum. Now, yeah. So the print statement also have a lot of flexibility in terms of how you construct a mixture of we call the string literal, right? And then this is called the variable. You can actually mix them together. So you can certainly do that, right? If I want to insert the sum of the numbers, comma number 1, so I want to intermix and let's see, number 2. Okay, I want to mix the variable with the string literal, right? You can certainly do that. Let's see, the sum of numbers. Don't worry, the comma will automatically give you a space, right? So you don't need to particularly worry about the space. Number 2 are sum. Okay, let's run this. This looks good. 42 and 24. Sum of numbers 42 and 24 are 66, right? You can see that you can intermix variables with literals this way and print them in one line. Any question on that? Now, of course, you can do it 10 times. Later on, you will learn something called a loop. So with a loop, you can actually specify, I want to just repeat this 10 times, right? As a matter of fact, I can just show you right now. You can say for I in range 10. So basically, you actually, you can repeat this 10 times, right? You don't need this. Now, of course, you want this to be inside this. Later on, you would find that this indentation is important. Is because Python rely on indentation to know these two statements are within this for statement, right? So that means you want to iterate these two lines 10 times, right? So sum equal to number. Well, actually, let me talk about a variable assignment. Okay, so I'm going to write this sum equal to sum plus number. Yeah, there's no number one, just number. What does that mean on line number 8? Of course, it's a good habit to make sure that initial sum is 0, right? Because I want to add all the numbers together. It's a summation or accumulator, right? So I want to add all together. Now, so for 10 times, I'm going to add all 10 numbers together. So sum is basically a placeholder for all the summation so far we have seen so far, right? Every time you get a number, I'm going to add to it. So sum will become bigger and bigger. So what to read from here is, this is called assignment operator. By the way, it's not like mathematical equal, right? So in mathematical equal, you use double equal, like A equal to B. That means I want to tell if number A is equal to number B. But if you use single equal sign, it's assignment, means you evaluate the right-hand side first. The right-hand side is a expression, sum plus a number, right? And you calculate that number and assign it to the left-hand side. So basically that interprets that is, I have an initial sum is 0, and add the first number, whatever it is, 42. So after this statement, sum is equal to what number? 42, right? And the second time I get a 24, okay, so sum will be 42, and I'm add 24. At end of the day, right, the sum will be 42 times plus 24, right? So, and for 10 times, it will get a summation. So that accomplished the task for 10 integers, okay? And then sum of, I don't need to get all the numbers. I just say sum of the numbers are, and sum, just print them, okay? So let's run it. 42, 24, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, the sum of the numbers are 101. Got it? Any questions so far? Of course, we won't learn the for loops until chapter 3, but I will just give you some. So today is just to give you some taste of what Python can do, right? Let's move on to the next challenge. Oh yeah, you all played with Super Mario, right? And so in Super Mario, you have these blocks printed on the screen. So I want you to use a print to print this grid of a hash sign. This like pretend this is a brick, right? How to do that? Well, you haven't learned the for loop yet, but so we can erase this, right? Actually, let me share this link with you guys so you can actually interact with it as well. So that's the link. You can actually watch it on another window, right? So how we print Super Mario? Oh, by the way, if I don't want to run this, right? I can wrap it into a function. A function is just basically I refactor this code into a unit. We call the function. We can define what do you call it? Problem 1, right? Or challenge 1, solution 1, solution 1 to that problem, right? With a colon, and then do that. So, and I'm gonna have to indent this so that it will be all inside solution one. So now, if I run it, nothing will happen, right? Because these are just a function definition, right? So, so I can just define another function called Mario block, right? So what I'm gonna do is print, this is, let's see. Okay, let me print this multiple times. It's kind of silly, right? This look like a Mario block, right? Okay, so define two functions. The way you call the function, you just say, I want to run Mario. Okay, and then you can run it. And here you go. This is Mario code. So you only run this function, not this function, right? You can use that. So by use a function, you actually organize your code into a logical unit. So, and you can reuse the code later. So that's a very good way to modularize your code, and it's a good practice. We won't talk about function until maybe chapter, I don't know, let's see, 4. So chapter 2 is a data type strings. Chapter 3 is branching. 4 is loop. Chapter 5 is a function. Okay, so that's functions. Now, of course, you don't need to write silly things like that. You can say for I in range, let's say 5. Okay, and you just print. Now, notice I indent one thing, so it will print 5 times. But run again, it's the same thing, right? Now you can make it even shorter, right? So you can just say print this times 5. So what multiplication with string means, you can concatenate that 5 times, and it will run the same thing, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Of course, you can use a space so that make it look nicer, right? Any question for that? So you can see for loop is very useful. You can reduce repetition. Of course, we'll talk about the range function details later. There's a lot of different parameters that you can use for the range function. So we talk about input, we talk about output, and using variables, assignment variables, right? What else we need to talk about? How to print this kind of pyramid. Yeah. So if we want to print this kind of pyramid, okay. What do you think? Let's use this. So basically, what is this? This docstring, right? Anything inside the docstring is ignored by Python. So I can just do that. All right. So we want to print out this pyramid. Anyway, how are we going to accomplish that? Well, I can see this pyramid as a combination of white spaces and hash sign. Can we? So basically, it's similar to this, except that we replace partially this with white spaces, right? So with 5 levels, the first row, we want 4 white spaces and 1 hash sign, right? Oops. And on the second row, we need 3 white spaces and 2 hash sign, right? So this one, we need 4 white space and 1 hash. And this is 3 white space and 2 hash. Do you see Do you see the pattern already? 2 white space and 3 hash, right? What's the invariant here? Do you see any pattern here? Can somebody tell me?
The white space is I minus 1 and the hash is I.
Very good. You already jumped ahead. Yes. So I is a variable. I is from, actually, let's print I, right? Just for debugging. For debug purposes, you can print I, right? So, well, maybe make it better. I plus row, right? So make it better. So I'm gonna print how many, for the first row is 4 white space. 4 is 5 minus I, right? Times, let's using parentheses, times, well, let me just use this. The white space just times this, and plus this one hash times I, right? Okay, let's just run it. Do you understand this now? So we have this many white spaces and this many hash. Hopefully I is from 1, right? But let's run it. Oh, there is a problem. Unsupported operand. Okay, so I made a similar mistake again. I have to use string to convert that to number. Convert number to string, right? Because that I is a number. So now let's run it. Okay, 0th row. Oh, I is from 0, right? So in computer science, a lot of things are 0-based counting. So we start from 0, not 1. There's a epic story on why is so, but anyhow, that's another day. So it's starting from 0. How are we gonna adjust for that? Well, we can just make it the I plus 1, right? So this is I plus 1. And then 5 minus I plus 1, right? 5 minus I plus 1. Do you understand? So I plus 1 will be starting from 1, and that should work. Oh, there is another problem. 29, Mario. So what's going on here? Maybe I'm missing a parenthesis. I think I'm missing a parenthesis. See, there is the thing, right? Programming is precise. So any missing punctuation, white spaces, or parentheses mismatching will throw you into this kind of weird error. So that's why I highly recommended that you debug again, another reason to debug in IDE so that you can easily, and plus, run it often. Every time you add a new line, run it again. So if there's error, if error is introduced in the last line that you just wrote. So first row is that, second row is that. I think that will accomplish that. So now you can comment this code. That's a debug code, right? And run again. Now, we get this pyramid, okay? That's how you think about the programming, just by trying and think about algorithms and select your data structure and so on. Of course, you can let I starting from 1 instead of 0. So instead of using range 5, which is 0 to 4, you can say range 1, comma, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 to 6. So why 1 to 6? Because the range function is a little bit odd. Is it including the starting point, but it will exclude the ending point. So it's gonna give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now I don't need this 1 anymore, right? Plus 1. So I can directly using I. Let's run again. It's the same thing. Let's just, so you can see this one will starting from, second row. Oh yeah, this is I plus 1. I don't need that. Okay. So now I is starting from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you need the 1, 6 because the 6 is not included. Okay. The range function also have a third parameter, which is the step function. So you can actually skip. You don't need to count by 1, you can count by 2, right? Or count by 3. So if you do that, you will also get just 1 and 4 because you are just adding 3. So that's the start, stop, and step function for the range. Okay, so you learned something, useful today. Functions, loops, and output, input. That's most important. I think that's there is a homework or something that you can think about it, right? I'm not gonna do it today, but I will give you that problem and you can think about how to do it. Maybe when you learn more in this course, I think no later than chapter 3, you should be able to tackle that. There's also a guessing game. So write a program that picks a pseudo random number, right, between 1 and 10 and gives the user 3 chances to guess. Each time give you message whether it's lower or higher. Okay, so let's try that as well. Let me continue with this thing. Right? So again, I can define a function called guessing game. Guessing game. Okay. Now this column is important, right? Oh, we have one more participant. Nice. And then we're gonna use this called docstring, right? And this is a good habit. So you will, 3 months from now, you won't remember what is this for, right? Program that picks the pseudo random number between 1 and 10 inclusive. How are we gonna approach that? All right, sorry. I need to show this. Right. So instead of calling Mario, I'm gonna call this function guessing. All right, so I'm gonna call this function, but I need to implement this function first. So when you look at this, you will say, what's my input and what's my output, right, in the function. So the input is basically user guess, right? User have to guess a number. Okay. How we approach that. So you probably, you can Google it, how to get a random number. So there is a keyword called import. Basically, now you are using somebody else's code, right? Somebody else happened to write a random function for you, random number generator for you. So you just import it. Actually, you have to import it. Typically, it's imported at the beginning of the program. So you import random, but you can also import in the function, right? Hopefully, they have a random to be imported. That make me wonder. Anyway, you can also import here, doesn't matter. And then I'm gonna say random number is equal to random dot choice range 1 to 100. So 101. So I'm generating a number between 1 and 100, right? Is that correct? And it's this random dot choice basically means I'm gonna randomize it. Okay, randomize it. So now you have a random number, right? Now first of all, I'm gonna print a number so that I know it's random, right? So let's run it. 78, 77, 14. You can see on this corner, right? It's changing all the time. So it is a random number, cool. So now I can comment this. So I don't know, I'm done with debugging, right? So now I'm gonna give user 3 chances. So for I in range 3. So I give you 3 chances. So in each chance, I'm gonna ask user guess, right? User guess. Remember, I'm gonna convert that to integer, right? Input, you learn input. please guess my number, column 1 to 100. All right. So I will give user a chance to guess my number. And I grab that input and save it to a user guess. And to be a good defensive programming, you would assume that user may guess outside the range, right? So he may not pay attention to this string. So I'm gonna give you so while true, basically I'm gonna keep asking user, this is a while loop, another way to make a loop. So basically say if, so now I have a branch condition, right? If user guess, see this is like English, right? So it's really user friendly, is greater or equal to 1 and user guess is less than equal to 100. That means this number is within the range. I'm gonna break the loop. Basically, I'm done with the input loop. So otherwise, they'll go back to the while loop and keep asking you for the number, right? So yeah, so this is another use of the while loop, okay? So you will learn all these syntax on chapter 4, don't worry, but this just give you a feel like this is more like English, right? So if user guess, now you have this correct number and within a good range. If it's less than our number, right? You can print, you guessed too small, okay? So, and then there is a else if, ALIF, this is a short for else if, user guess is greater than random number, then print you guess too big, okay? And then else, so if it's not big, not small, what happened? Well, he guessed right? You guess right, and winner, right? You're the winner. So you win. And then I can break out of the loop. So basically I'm out of this for loop, okay? So you guess the 3 times. If there is a 3 times else here, this else is corresponding to this for loop. If you go through 3 times and you didn't guess correct, what do? Well, you want to print out the print out you lose the number. It should be. Then now I give you a new way of doing that, right? There is a syntax called format and our number. Okay, so this way you don't need to convert that to a string. You can use the format to basically replace whatever in this curly brackets, right? So there's another way to assemble a string and print this out. All right, so let's play it. So is this easy to understand? Just like, you know, just like English, right? So it's not that hard. Let's just run it. Please guess a number. Give me a number, please. Let's play this together. What number are you gonna guess?
36.
Wow, very specific. That's your favorite number? The guess is too small. What are you gonna do now? You only have 3 chances. What's the next number?
74.
74, wow, too big. All right, so it's between 36 and 74.
52.
52, ooh. Okay, so the answer is 45, right? Can we make it better? Let's run again, all right? Let's make a 50 first, too big. 25, too small. Give me a number between 25 and 50.
40.
Good enough. All right, 40. So it's 31. So obviously 3 times is not good enough for 1 to 100, right? What if we can change this? Let's do 5 times. Maybe 5 times is better. How about that? So I just need to change the range to 5, and so I can do it 5 times and then run again. So first of all, I'm still going to 50. You see what I'm doing? This is too small, so it's 75, right? Too big. So what is between 50 and 75? 12.5. 63, maybe. Too small. Between 63 and 75.
70.
Okay. We are winner. You see, the strategy is every time you just pick the middle number, right? By doing that, you actually throw away half of the number answers. So by doing that, every time you divide by 2, divide 2, how many times? So if you do 100 divided by, let's do this. Okay, high sound. So if you do 100 divided by 2, 50, and 50 divided by 2, 25, 25 divided by 2, 12, 12 divided by 2. How many times I can do this? Keep going. So I can do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and I'm gonna only have one number left, right? So I can claim that I only need to get 6 times to guarantee I always win. Do you understand? This is called the binary search, which is a powerful way doing a search algorithm. So you will see a lot of algorithm here at play here. So yeah, I think that's pretty much for this taste of Python.